Hey guys, welcome back to Keys of the Cosmos. Well, I'm back with another equipment review. We're on quite a run here of equipment review videos. I know you guys always enjoy them, and I've done quite a few videos lately of my CEM26 EC mount from Ioptron. But the last couple have been about some of the issues I've had with it. So we're gonna try not to rehash too much of that. I've gotten that out of my system, but I wanted to do a review based on its performance before I had those troubles, and obviously since it's been repaired. So we're going to base it on that now that we know it's working properly. But we're also going to compare it to its bigger brother, the CEM40 EC, which I have. So what's the difference? What do you get for the price increase between this and the CEM40? And also maybe compare it to some of the other mounts out there, and hopefully this video will give you an idea if you're in the market right now for a mount, sort of which way to lean to depending on what you want to do and what your goal is in astrophotography. So let's talk all about it. So basically, as we mentioned, this is a smaller brother of the CEM40 EC. So those numbers 26 and 40 refer to payload. So pretty obvious. 26, this holds, at least on paper, 26 pounds of payload. Now obviously you don't want to go that high if you don't need to. I've never put anywhere close to that on this, so I can attest to whether or not it does in fact operate well under 26 pounds. But it does, 26 pounds still is a good amount. Like you can put on a medium-sized telescope with 26 pounds as long as you don't have anything out of the ordinary attached to it, and it should run no problem. So it's a good number, it's still very versatile if this is going to be your one and only mount. But obviously you're not going to be putting on like an 8-inch SCT, because once you factor in the camera and all that, you're going to be pushing that 26 pounds easily, maybe even a little bit more. So this is more for that medium refractor size telescope. Now, just like its big brother, this is the EC version, so I'm not going to get all into that, but it's basically, I explained in my review of the CEM40, which you can check out if you haven't in my channel. But that stands for the encoders that are included with this. So the encoders basically primarily give it really accurate tracking, and it helps you the most, I'd say. I mean, it helps you at all times. It helps the mount to be very accurate, but it helps in particularly when you're doing unguided tracking. So I always joke, but I still do a lot of unguided, particularly with my smaller telescopes. And a mount like this really helps you to get away with that and still do quite long exposures, but we'll talk about that in a bit. So that's what that EC. They make a non-EC version for each as well, and they're definitely cheaper. So if you're doing guiding, and you're set on that, and I know a lot of guys do, maybe the EC isn't for you, and you're going to save the money and spend it elsewhere. But if you like to do unguided, maybe with a smaller mount like this, you travel more and you're more time constraint, and you want to bother having to set up the guiding, this is a great mount where you don't really have to, and still do long exposures. Now, the difference too between this and the CEM40 is you don't get all the bells and whistles. My review of the CEM40, I talked about how it comes with GPS, it comes with iPolar, it has ports on the head here, and that like USB, so you can actually run the mount itself provides power so you can run accessories off of it. It has internal cables between the deck axis here, the deck axis, and the RA, and on this one, I'll show a picture, you can't see it, but there's a little wire sticking out on the CEM40, it's internal. It also, with the CEM40, you can run your own wires through the mount and down, whereas with this one, you don't really have all those options. So it's definitely a simpler mount. I'm not going to say it's cheap in any way. It's, the focus obviously with this is because this is not a cheap mount like the CEM40. It's about $1,300 cheaper than the CEM40, but you're not paying for all those bells and whistles. So, and in addition to the lighter payload, you're not going to get all those. So if that's important to you and you're looking at just buying one mount one time, the CEM40 is definitely a better option to go. But for this one, as a secondary mount, for just, like I said, a smaller telescope or to take traveling, it's kind of nice, it's simple, and you don't have to, you may not need to worry about all that other stuff. So, but in addition to that, having said that, you don't have power. So I do have my little Velcro pouch here, which I put a battery pack in, and I use that to power my dew heater. It's not that you need to, you know, if you're able to have a good source of power, and you know your ASI air can get a good source of power and then run power to those other accessories, it's not really an issue. But it is nice to have those accessories run off the mount. So I don't mind because it's a secondary mount anyway, but it is nice to have that on the CM40. What I will say is about this mount, like I said, it's everything simple, but everything you need is here. Now I did buy the GPS for this one. I had to pay extra for that. It's not expensive, I can't remember, but on the CM40 it's included. Normally I have it like adhered to the mount, but ever since I sent it to Ioptron, same with the hand controller, I had that fastened to the leg. I had to take it all apart, rip stuff off. I haven't had a chance to put it all back together nicely the way I had it, so hopefully I'll be able to do that soon. But it does come with a hand controller. It comes with iPolar, which we've talked about in other videos. I'll have a picture there, but basically it has a camera built in to do Ioptron's version when it comes to polar aligning. Now I still like to use the ASI air. It's more accurate in my opinion. But it's nice again to have that option, especially if you're using like a camera lens where it's really wide field and you're not too worried about polar alignment. The iPolar is great. You know, it's super quick. It's like playing a video game. You just get the crosshairs to line up, and you can usually do it within 3 or 4 minutes. So it's a nice option to have. I got the sturdier tripod. Now that brings me to why I really like Ioptron mounts, which I talked about in my other video on the CM40. It's their weight. Especially when you're talking about the bigger mounts, weight is an issue for me because I have to carry my mounts oftentimes up and down the stairs, downstairs to get outside. I don't just walk out the front door with the way my setup is here. So, and I don't like to tear down, especially at 4 and 5 in the morning. I like to just be able to leave it assembled like you see it here. So to be able to just pick it up and go is a huge bonus. Now with the CM40, that's a bigger factor because a lot of its competitors, they weigh like 65, 70, 75 pounds between the tripod and the mount. Whereas my CM40 weighs like, I forget, 30 to 35 pounds, something like that. This one, the mount itself is 4.5 kilograms, so around 9.5 pounds. And then the tripod is about 5 kilograms as well. So you're around 20 pounds. So super light. You can pick this up, carry it up the stairs, no problem. Bring it wherever you need to go. So again, it's a big thing for me, for my situation. Maybe for you, you could keep yours in the shed and then you only have to pull it out 5 feet, 10 feet. It's not a big deal. But for me and anyone who needs to carry their mount, it's a big deal. And it just makes setting up that much easier. So that's why I like it. And just like its big brother, this one is also very light. And especially for the payload that it's able to carry. What else? We could kind of talk about the pros and cons. I don't have a lot of cons. Maybe we'll start with that. But the biggest con I have, I'll say there's 2. So with the CM40, I complained about this knob here. You have your Alt-Az knobs and your knob to sort of move it up and down when you're polar aligning. On the CM40, it's a different style. It's kind of a circular knob that runs perpendicular to the ground. Okay, so you turn it this way. This is a little bit different. This is your standard knob here that you just turn, and it's much more secure, much more sturdy. It doesn't have a loose spot like the CM40 where you're turning it, all of a sudden it just spins freely and then grabs again. This one doesn't have that. It's much more secure, much more accurate for your adjustments up and down. So that I love. But the Alt-Az knobs themselves, okay, so moving the mounts left and right when you're trying to polar align, they're horrible. For a mount this pricey, this is a joke. Honestly, it's so annoying. I tried taking it apart and putting it back together to see if maybe I did something wrong, but they don't fasten well. They stick. It's disappointing. Let me put it that way. So it's funny. It's exact opposite. On the CM40, the Alt-Az knobs are great, but this knob drives me nuts. On this one's great. The Alt-Az drive me nuts. So, I mean, it's a small gripe, but it's still it's a pain, and it just makes setting up that much more difficult. The other issue is I have the same issue as my CM40 when it comes to third axis balancing. So I made a video on that. Check that out if you're not sure what I mean, or if you have one of these mounts and you've been struggling with it. So basically, the best way to explain is when you're balancing your mount, okay, and you have the RA axis perpendicular to the ground, and you adjust the weight so that it's in balance, and then so you feel like the mount's in balance, and then you go to put the mount sort of in the upright position like it is now, so it's facing Polaris, and then you unlock it and let it go, and it starts to pull. And it doesn't make sense because you've balanced it. Let's assume you balanced the deck as well, and your RA seems to be balanced, and then you go to leave it in the upright position and it starts pulling automatically without even touching it. So it has to do with third axis balancing. Now I know a lot of guys and girls, they make comments. You can take this apart. There's little screws and all that, and you can adjust the center shaft here. And I think the problem is that it's off a little bit. I don't know why they do it that way. But clearly it's a problem because both models have had the same issue. Now I have a video on it, on how to fix that. It's just you go to Home Depot, get a few pieces, some washers, and you basically run another source of weight off the end here. And it costs a few bucks, and it takes, once you put it together and you get the weight right, it just adds about 30 seconds to your setup time. So it's fine. It's a gripe. It's just another bit of a pain that's sort of unique to this these mounts. I talked all about it in that video, so watch that video if you don't know what I'm talking about. But it's just a stupid thing, but it's a gripe. Now, what is nice with this mount, another gripe that I had with the CM40, I made a video on it as well, was connecting to the ASI Air. It would not connect to the ASI Air. I had to actually use a hub from Amazon, like a USB hub, a non-powered one, and that did the trick, running the ASI Air through that and then to the mount. For some reason now it recognized it. With this one, I had bought the hub in, waiting for that problem or expecting that problem, but I never did have that. It connected to the ASI Air, no problem. So that's good. So those are really my biggest two gripes, is just the alt-as knobs, and the counterweight shaft here has that same off-axis problem that you need to either adjust it, take it apart and adjust it like some have, or just use the third axis counterweight to correct it. I will say it's a bit fussy to balance for whatever reason, but it's just a more matter of fine tuning it. I can see I have my tape here so I know where to put my weight. This extension that you see on the counterweight shaft, this comes with it. It also comes, speaking of that, with this weight. I believe this is 10 kilograms, or maybe I'm just weak from working hard today. This is good for most things. Actually, this might be 5 kilograms. I have to look that up. Anyway, it'll be here what it is. But this will be good for most things, especially when you're talking like medium-sized telescope, and you can move it up and down depending on how heavy it is. But if you do want to run a camera lens or something a really small telescope, you're probably going to want like this smaller. I think this is 2.5 kilogram weight. So I bought this. It wasn't too expensive. Now, again, good to know that if you do have a CM40, you do need to buy separate weights. The counterweight bar is a different size. It's smaller. So this hole here does not match the CEM40. So just know that you're gonna have to buy extra weights if you already have one of the mounts. But other than that, as far as like the design and everything, I'm happy. I mean, yeah, like I said, it's got the wire sticking out for the RA axis and all that, but that's okay. It's so small, it doesn't bother me. Other than that, it's very sturdy. The tripod's awesome. I would say overkill even for this particular mount. Very sturdy. It doesn't come, there's another thing, like it doesn't come with the vibration pads on the bottom like the CEM40 does. Those are minor things, but you really do get everything with the CEM40. With this one, you don't get all those bells and whistles. What else? Oh, one thing may seem dumb, but I really do like is this knob here. You can see it sticking up. So that's the one to tighten where the telescope fits in there. And it's really well designed. Now with the CM40, I mean, obviously you're putting a bigger telescope, so there's actually 2 knobs you need to tighten, and it's a bit tricky. You're already holding a heavy telescope, and then you're trying to tighten it. With this one, it's great. You can literally just, you're holding if you're right-handed like me, you're holding your telescope, putting it in, and then you can literally just with your finger tighten it about 85%, and it works really well. So it's super easy to get the telescope in. It may seem like a dumb thing, but it works really well. That's what it's all about, right? It can be designed fancy, but does it actually work? And this is not fancy in any way, but it works well. So that's always good. It makes your setup that much easier. Yeah, so that's basically an overview of what you get. It also comes with a case, so that's awesome. That's a big bonus. You don't get a case with most mounts these days. You got to buy a separate case, especially if you like to travel. So no, one less thing to worry about. Or if you need to send it back to Ioptron like I did, you can just throw it back in the case and put it in a box. So let's talk about performance. Now, again, I mentioned I've had some issues with this one. It started off well. I made a video on it. I'm not going to rehash it, but basically it started to act up. In addition to not tracking well, because I've only ever used this unguided, it also was not going to the home position. I'd send it home and it would go like way off. Yeah, it had some issues. So I sent it back, but since I got it back, it's been working flawlessly. So I'm doing right now 4-minute unguided exposures with my Takahashi telescope, which is about 450 millimeters focal length. So, I mean, you can't ask for any better than that. I'm sure you could push it to 5 if you were using maybe even a smaller one or a camera lens for sure, and you get your balance just right and all that. But 4 to 5 minute unguided is, you know, almost unheard of at this price range. Obviously, you can spend a lot more and get even longer exposures, but for your, you know, main line of telescope mounts, that's about as good as you get. Now there is like the AM5 from ZWO. If you want to compare it to some of its competitors, it's about $400 or $500 cheaper. The ZWO is, and it's a harmonic drive. So you don't actually need it for most telescopes on it. You don't need the counterweight and obviously the counterweight shaft as well. But from what I hear, you're not going to be doing 4 to 5 minute unguided. So if that's what's important to you, and you're like me, you're lazy and you don't always like the guide. In this case, with this mount, never. This is the mount for you. Those encoders make a huge difference. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, they enable you to do the unguided exposures and get really good results. Round stars and consistency. There's no periodic error where it's like it does 4 good exposures and then 1 bad one, or 2 bad ones and then 4 good ones. It corrects that. So it runs like, unless you get an issue like wind or something, just about every single exposure is going to be good on this mount. So that's always good. It's nothing worse than thinking you took your test shot or 2 and you think you're good. You go to bed, you wake up and you realize that half the images have elongated stars. So no periodic error with this mount. It runs very well now that's been fixed. So I'm very happy with it. I hope it continues to run well. I'm going to keep my eye on it, obviously, but in the summertime I'll be using it a lot more with some of those bigger summer nebulae. So I'll definitely have a follow-up video to see how it's running, but so far so good. I'm very happy with it. And you know, it's been a good mount ever since they fixed it. So yeah, I mean, like I said, it all depends what you want. I mean, this is not a cheap mount, even though it's cheaper than its bigger brother. But you know, if you're only looking for one mount and you want versatility, this might not be the scope, because you may need more of a weight capacity. So then in my case, and in my recommendation would be the CEM40. But if you know that you only want to use a smaller telescope or camera lens, this is perfect. And it does the job, and you don't need to guide, especially if you're in a rush or you're traveling. This is a super easy telescope to live with, mount to live with. So I give it my approval. I've had my issues with it, but Ioptron fixed it. And even though their customer service wasn't the best, now that it's working, I'm very happy with it. And so I think that anyone who buys it, well, what I learned with these scopes is that they're finicky. With these, I keep saying scopes, with these mounts, they're finicky, you know. But I was thinking this was an Ioptron thing, but the more I talk to guys in the community and I read people's stories, you know, all the other brands have their issues too. So I think it's just a matter of sometimes you get a lemon or one that has issues, and as long as they take care of it for you, that's all you can ask for. So what I would say about Ioptron, when they work really well, top notch. So I'm very happy with it. You know, the AM5, like I mentioned, was tempting. It came out just after I bought this, but now that I have this and it's working right, I'm happy with my decision. And I know that if this continues to work well, it's going to be a mount to serve me for many, many years. So it's always nice. I like to buy something and not have to change it because something way better came out and it just blows your current whatever it is away. But in this case, I don't think that's going to happen. Running 4-minute unguided exposures is pretty unheard of, so I'm very happy with it. So yeah, I recommend it, and you know, it's an easy mount to put together, nothing complicated. If you've used one before, an equatorial mount, you're not going to have any issues. It's pretty self-explanatory. So in addition to that, Ioptron has a lot of help on their website, and of course there's forums as well. So I really like this mount. I've fallen back in love with it now that it's fixed, and I can't wait to use it this summer and do some imaging with some of those beautiful nebulae with it, and to share it with you guys. But I'll have more coming soon, guys. I have a camera that I want to get some use with, pretty high-end camera that I want to do a review on very soon. And also I have some binoculars, some really big ones that I want to do a review on. They're not mine, but I have access to them, and I think you're going to find it interesting because you don't see binoculars like this every day. So I'll have that for you as well soon. But thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate your support. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. But I'll see you on the next one. Take care.